Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Super Deluxe Gamescast review. John and my producer slash right hand slash best pal slash fun little guy slash best boy slash handsome devil.
It's a lot of
Derek
slashes.
You're a very
Hi.
slashy. You're a very slashy kind of person.
Hello, everyone. John, you've brought me here today for a review discussion, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Tomb Raider.
I don't have opinions on that.
I'm sorry, Tomb Raider, not Tom Raider.
Oh, I do have opinions on that. Yes,
We're going to be talking about no. Tom Raider is an old acquaintance of mine. I get him mixed up.
Easy to understand.
But no, we're going to talk about, and not just any Tomb Raider, Derek. We're going to be talking about the Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered collection, which we kindly received a review code for. So thank you very much.
From developer / publisher, I think it's pronounced Aspyr.
Aspyr.
Aspyr makes more sense, actually, now that you say that.
I think it's Aspyr. Yeah.
They've done a ton of like porting and remaster work. And I just think that that's like undervalued work in general, because especially for a lot of games, like prior to now, how would one have played the classic original Tomb Raider games in a legal fashion? It would have been nearly impossible. So the studios that put in the hard work to take these games and port them and remaster them and make them available, as well as to pay like homage to these sort of classic, because make no mistake, like the original Tomb Raider games are a classic piece of gaming history. It's undervalued work. So
well, and I want to just kind of point something out here at the very beginning. Just get it out of the way. Crystal Dynamics had a disclaimer at the very beginning of the game talking about how they don't sign on to the depictions of certain ethnic groups.
Oh, okay.
In this franchise,
that's
specifically
so like on Disney movies on Disney Plus and stuff. These days.
Like, and I'm specifically talking about like Tomb Raider 3 here.
Yeah, Tomb Raider 3 has some stuff that's not ideal. Yeah,
and if you're the kind of person that gets mad at that or that upsets you, then you're just an absolute piss baby boil of a human being.
Oh yeah, grow the fuck up, right?
So,
because especially like I think this is the best of both worlds when you can present something that maybe has some like slightly problematic elements, and of course the entire concept of Tomb Raider is very rooted in, not to be a fucking nerd, but like very rooted in like the colonial idea of like, here's the British white lady.
It belongs in a museum.
Yeah, the British white lady, going into exotic locales, and it's very
you said that
it's very like, orientalist in a lot in a but
the way you just said that, Derek, I imagine you in like a pith hat and like with a monocle.
That's exactly the image I was hoping to invoke. So thank you.
Oh yeah, so we're heading an expedition out to the jungle.
Well, we're going out to the savage islands.
The savage lands.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just a space that's like obviously a little problematic. The original Tomb Raider games wholly exist in that space. But like to put these games back out there, to make them available, to make, this piece of gaming history, put it back in people's hands, and just also like acknowledge like, yeah, parts of this haven't aged well. And I think that's a good compromise. But we're on such an aside. Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered collection. What did you play this
Jack, I just want to talk about pith hats and the savage lands now.
I'm sure you do.
But so here's the deal. Here's how I want to approach
What did you play this on?
I played this on Switch.
Okay, we got a Switch code. It's on like everything, right?
It's on everything. Here's how I want to tackle this very specifically. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the story of Tomb Raider 1 through 3. They're games from like 5 generations ago or some shit.
And they're not like narrative masterpieces. That's not what you play Tomb Raider for.
Hey, Lara Croft's in a tomb and she's stealing treasures. Like, there might be some wolves you shoot, or maybe even a T-Rex. But that's what these games are. I played all 3 games originally on the PlayStation 1, so I have a great deal of familiarity with this franchise.
Yeah, I played 1 and 3. I think, I don't think I've ever played 2, weirdly. But yeah, so I didn't get to play the collection, but I have some familiarity with the original games. So I'll be curious to kind of pick your brain about these.
So, and for, full disclosure's sake, full transparency, I played through the entirety of Tomb Raider 1 on the collection, and I played a few hours in 2 and 3. So
enough to form opinions about
enough
games you know
right.
well enough. Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the stories here, right? Because if you want to do that, go read a Wikipedia article.
I mean, they're all homages to like classic pulp adventure, right?
And like it's Tomb Raider 1 through 3.
All of the fun, but also like all of the fraught territory that comes with. But it's pulp adventure. It's dudes with machetes. In this case, like a chesty woman with pistols, swinging through a jungle as it's you get the imagery.
So these are very much Tomb Raider 1 through 3 as they appeared on the PlayStation 1 with an option for updated visuals, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Right off the bat, the new updated visuals are available with the press of a button. You can do it anytime during gameplay. And Derek, I got to tell you, they're really beautiful.
Yeah, the screenshots I've seen look pretty good. It's a very pretty collection.
It is, and it runs flawlessly on the Switch. I have not seen a single frame drop throughout my playtime. Not one. It runs impeccably. The shadows are really good. The lighting is phenomenal. The water surfaces are so much better than the original play. Like when you switch back to the PS1 visuals, like it definitely has its charm in that old school, and you know me, Derek. Like when it comes to Super Nintendo and PS1 games, like I'm a visual purist, right? And I expected to be like, okay, I'm going to have a gander at the new visuals and be like, ooh, ah, and I'm going to switch back to the PlayStation 1 visuals. But the PlayStation 1 visuals have there's no reason that mode couldn't have run at 30 frames a second or couldn't have run at 60 frames a second. It does not.
Well, maybe it's got something to do with the original logic of the original game engine.
But there's also a ton of frame pacing.
That kind of sucks.
So that said, dude, the updated visuals are not only very, very pretty, but they also do a really good job of keeping the aesthetic.
The comparison I would make looking at comparisons of like the original game versus the updated graphics, it's very Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D, right? Where I like
go ahead. No,
I was just gonna say where like those games, I think a lot of people played like this is just a great famous example. Played Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS and were like, this game looks really good, and it took comparing like against the original N64 version to realize how massive of an upgrade the 3DS version was. In the same way, I look at these screenshots and little video clips of the Tomb Raider Remastered collection here, and it seems to me like they very well captured the aesthetic of like, yeah, this is an old like PS1 game, but it kind of looks more like how you remember it, not how it actually looks. Does that seem like a fair assessment?
I would actually take it a step further.
Ooh, that's probably fair. It's better than that.
So having played them, excuse me, I would actually compare it to the difference between Resident Evil PS1 and the remake for GameCube that got ported to other systems. It's that I think is an apt comparison. It's much more than a remaster. Like these are full on new visuals with new models and much improved lighting and like updated textures. Like this is a huge difference, a massive difference. That said, it still controls like a game from 1998.
Yeah, boy. If people have not played the original Tomb Raider games, like these were like a genre of their own, right? I mean, they were, first off, everybody was experimenting with how you make a 3D game on the N64 and on the PlayStation 1. But the Tomb Raider games, while groundbreaking at the time, the comparison I made is like Legacy of Kain, right? It's like, boy, these are not necessarily always great games to go back to if you are spoiled by modern control schemes.
So I will say this, there is an updated control scheme, right? Like you can play it, you can play it with analog controls. You don't have to use the tank controls. That said, the analog controls still aren't like, I find them easier to manage than the tank controls. But this is still a game where movement is based behind the scenes on a grid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the jumping is still like an exercise in frustration. Case in point, the footage that you're presumably watching right now, if you're watching this review on YouTube, the footage that I recorded for Tomb Raider 2, it took me like 9 minutes to land that first major jump, simply because Lara doesn't she doesn't like to listen when you tell her to stop running. And she doesn't like to listen when you tell her to jump.
Definitely that's a great way to put it, because I definitely remember a sort of momentum to the movement in those games. Yeah, I mean,
in the combat, Derek, not great. It wasn't great in the first one. It's not great here. Granted, it's in Tomb Raider 1 at least. It's not like they're throwing enemies at you left and right. Whenever some wolves or cougars or like some bats pop up, you just roll around, you shoot them till they die. The real magic of Tomb Raider is in the exploration, in the atmosphere, and this is why, like, I really love Tomb Raider far more than I do Tomb Raider 2 and 3, because Tomb Raider, I think, nails that quintessential experience of just, Lara alone in some caves and some tombs with nothing but her two pistols. There's no other people around. There's no other humans around. And she's just fighting wildlife and, rock scrambling.
Yeah.
That to me is very compelling. And I feel like the Tomb Raider franchise, as things progress from 2 to 3, I feel like, especially with 3, like it kind of lost something when you make it more populated. I liken it to that sense of isolation that you feel in the Metroid franchise, right? Where Samus is alone. It's Samus against the world. Well, that's the same kind of feeling that I have when I play the original Tomb Raider. And as those games go on, 2 and then 3, something is lost there when you start injecting more humans into the mix. So like, I don't think Tomb Raider 2 and 3 are essential playthroughs. I do think the first Tomb Raider is absolutely essential gaming for anybody who likes either games from that era. If you love the original Tomb Raider, or if you miss this and you want to see kind of where Lara's story started. There are, and look, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is not a remake that had, or it's not a remake, but it's not a remaster. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's a remaster that didn't have like obvious love and attention to it, right? Like, these visuals are sumptuous.
Well, I think Tomb Raider is a franchise that matters a lot to people, right? It matters a lot. It is an important piece of gaming history. From the like origins of the 3D era of home consoles, it has managed to find new relevance with the Crystal Dynamics trilogy. It's of course, so much is inspired by Tomb Raider. I mean, Uncharted famously, right?
Uncharted for sure. Yeah.
My fear looking at this, right, is like, you can give the prettiest coat of makeup to these original games, but I fear that somebody of a newer era who is not used to weird and clunky 3D PS1, because there's a very specific kind of clunky PS1 era 3D game control. You know what I mean? If somebody is not used to that, they may never be able to get into these games. Like, the ship might have sailed on new people appreciating the original Tomb Raiders. That is my fear.
So that's an interesting point.
But I haven't played them in a while, and also I'm somebody who played them back in the day. So like, I don't know if I'm hand wringing over nothing.
So I think that there are remasters for new fans and old fans alike. There are remasters meant to bring in a new audience, and then there are remasters that are built solely for people working on nostalgia for something, right? The Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, I think, were a good way to like honor the past, but also bring in new players, right? Because it's not a game where you need precision.
Reset the clock.
Those are, but those are turn-based RPGs, right? Like, you don't need a whole lot of precision here. Tomb Raider, on the other hand, is something where if you've been weaned on games like modern day Uncharted, or like, modern, any kind of modern day action adventure game where you are working with a 2023 control scheme, right? These are going to feel like really foreign and strange to you, because you're like, why doesn't Lara move like Nathan Drake does, or countless other
What does she
action
move
games
like
or action
literally
adventure
any
games,
character in anything I've
right,
played?
like why is she not handling the way that, why does she handle like, a sack of peanut butter,
And like the
you know
reason for that is because at the
um
time we just didn't have that common design language. This was literally the era of everybody trying to figure out what did and did not work in 3D. And it would take, I mean, even a lot of games in the PS2 era were still kind of experimenting sometimes with like 3D movement and camera work. So like at the time this was revolutionary, right? As were so many other 3D platformers and action games of the time. I think this is interesting because I think this deserves to exist no matter what, because it's preserving a piece of history and celebrating a piece of gaming history. I could see myself getting and playing these at some point potentially, because
I think
I like
it's
the old games.
it's worth it. I think, I'll be honest with you, I think it's worth it just for Tomb Raider on its own, the first one. um Simply because the atmosphere in that game, I think, is unmatched. There's a reason that Tomb Raider is like the original game. There's a reason that game is so not only revered but so influential, right?
There's
Is because it nailed that atmosphere. Now that said, Derek, there are issues with this collection. I do feel that there should have been an option to bring in new players, like you said, with an even more updated control scheme that hews much closer to something you'd find in 2023.
yeah.
Right. Like I understand that might not work. That might not be possible because of the framework of the game itself. But I feel like they could have at least tried. Right.
Yeah.
It's not a deal breaker for me anyway. But it is something I agree with you. I feel like it could put off newer players. But there are other, I guess, for lack of a better term, amenities that we enjoy in 2024 that like in any other game, be it remaster or new, feel like no brainers that just aren't here. And there's one huge omission, Derek,
Okay.
in a game especially in the original 3 Tomb Raiders, which are notoriously difficult, that I feel like absolutely should have been there and wasn't. And I learned the hard way that it wasn't there. And can you guess what I'm going to tell you what it is, Derek?
I got no clue.
Autosave.
Mm.
There is no autosave whatsoever.
That hurts.
You have to remember to save. And in a world where we have been weaned on autosave.
Yeah, that's not great, but I mean,
Derek, I lost 3 hours of progress.
Oof.
Because of and maybe this is my fault, but I just assumed autosave was there. And so I want to make it very clear for people playing this. There is no autosave. Constantly save. Save.
My attitude, and again, like, I'm coming from somebody who has love and opinions for the original games, but has not touched this collection. My opinion on the Tomb Raider games is I think it's very cool that there is a remastered collection. Ironically, like, this is like putting it in a museum, right? This is making it a thing that more people can be involved with. I think I would ask people who are curious about the history of games, people who are passionate about gaming as an art form, and developers, right, or aspiring developers, to play these games, because I think they're a very notable example of like an era of experimentation, right? And clearly they were influential enough for a lot of different games to kind of pick up, and be inspired by these. I just think I would be worried about anybody new coming to these, because like they liked the Crystal Dynamics Tomb Raider trilogy and going like, wow, I like Tomb Raider. Let me see how these are. I worry most people would bounce off it. but I do think there's a lot of value as preserving this very interesting and experimental part of gaming history. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And like, look, like I don't want to put off anyone picking these up if you're interested, right? Like the original Tomb Raider especially is one of the most influential games of all time. And if you like, if you're waving it off simply because it's an old game, like you're doing yourself a disservice. Like Tomb Raider 2 and 3, I know for a lot of fans the older games, like me for example, they're pretty hit or miss, but Tomb Raider 1 is an essential experience, if you want my honest opinion. So for that alone, like this gets a thumbs up from me. But with the addition of the updated visuals, which I'm telling you right now, like are gorgeous, buttery smooth, incredible lighting, keeps that ambiance and that aesthetic that Tomb Raider is known for. Like that to me alone is worth the price of admission here. Like that, like seriously, if you're interested at all in where Tomb Raider started, this is essential playing.
This strikes me as a very, like, what is your relationship to video games, right? Because I think newer people who see video games not just as let me buy and play all of the things that make me feel good, but see it as like an art form that they're trying to experience different corners of. I see a lot of value here. Again,
absolutely.
As I keep saying, these are important games to our history and to like the design lineage of modern games. I don't know that they're going to be capital F fun for a ton of people who are not prepared for the trappings of the PS1 era. At sometimes they're most awkward, but I think that these are games that if you go in understanding that they're a product of the era they were made, and with an attitude of I am coming to learn and see where much of what I love came from, I do think you can have a really interesting experience playing through this trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go. Yeah, seriously, go play them. Pick them up.
All right, is that
great?
Is that what we got?
Yeah,
that's easy enough when it's a collection of remasters, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like like I knew what I was getting. I was in this for the extra visuals and the updated controls. And you know what? Despite my I don't want to sound like I'm too down on it because like I played through the entirety of the first Tomb Raider game, loved it. I'm gonna go back to it. Like I mean, it's great. So yeah,
I'll tell you this: if I ever get a hankering to play these again, like I am going to buy and play this collection rather than other methods, right?
That's what I would do
because it's made available to me, and I would like to support that kind of preservation and availability of classic 100%. Gaming. So, well, folks, I believe that's all we got. John, we got any footnotes before we head out?
Nope,
are we good?
Nothing.
Thank you once again to Aspyr for the code. We reviewed on Switch. It's on basically everything. Catch us live Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time for gaming news discussion. Kindness costs nothing.
Everybody have a great rest of your week.
I don't know what you just did, but I don't like it.
I'm a man up in a